Hello everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the weekly report. We need a peace president. Most people agree that we are closer to nuclear war than at any time since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Some would even argue that we are closer now than we were in those fateful days when Soviet missiles in Cuba almost triggered a nuclear war between the U.S. and the USSR. In those days, we were told that we were in a life or death struggle with communism and thus could not cede a square foot of territory, or the dominoes would fall one by one until the Reds ruled over us. That crisis was very real to me as I was drafted into the military in the middle of the USSR standoff over Cuba, and we could all feel how close we were to annihilation. Fortunately, we had a president in the White House at the time who understood the dangers of nuclear brinksmanship. Even though he was surrounded by hawks who could never forgive him for aborting the idiotic Bay of Pigs Cuban invasion, President John F. Kennedy picked up the telephone for a discussion with his Soviet counterpart, Nikita Khrushchev, which eventually saved the world. Historians now tell us that President Kennedy agreed to remove U.S. missiles from Turkey in exchange for the Soviets removing missiles from Cuba. It was a classic case of how diplomacy can work if properly employed. It's all too clear that we do not have a John F. Kennedy in the White House today. Although we no longer face a Soviet empire and a communist ideology as justification for taking a confrontational tone toward Russia, the Biden administration is still dragging the U.S. toward a nuclear conflict. Why are they putting us all at risk? The same old domino theory that was discredited in the Cold War? If we don't fight Russia down to the last Ukrainian, Putin will soon be marching through Berlin. This all started with Biden's promising to only send uniforms and medical supplies to Ukraine for fear of sparking a Russian retaliation. From there, we went to anti-tank missiles, multiple rocket launchers, Patriot missiles, Bradley fighting vehicles, and millions of rounds of ammunition. The Biden administration announced last week that it would send depleted uranium ammunition to Ukraine, which poisons the earth for millennia to come. Rumors are that long-range missiles are to be delivered soon, which could strike deep into Russia. Apparently, F-16 fighter jets are also on the way. The escalation rationale from Washington, we are told, is that since the Russians have not directly retaliated against NATO for NATO's direct support of Ukraine's war machine, we can be sure they never will respond. Is that really a wise bet? It is clear to many that U.S.-built F-16 fighters taking off from NATO bases with NATO pilots attacking Russians in Ukraine, or even Russia itself, would be a declaration of war on Russia. That means World War III, something we managed to avoid for the whole Cold War. Congress is silent or compliant as we lurch forward toward disaster for no discernible U.S. strategic goal. Biden, or whoever is actually running the government, is forging straight ahead. As we move into the U.S. presidential election cycle, one thing is clear. We desperately need a peace president to do for us what JFK did for the U.S. during the Cuba crisis. Hopefully, it won't be too late. Thanks for listening.